Hello, Medfield. Thank you for watching Medfield TV. My guest tonight on his usual appointment on the last Wednesday of the month is Mike Sullivan, and he's going to tell us about the upcoming election, local election. He's going to talk about the articles for town meeting, anything that's going to be urgent there, and then we'll have an annual town meeting and possibly a special town meeting for the state hospital. So he's going to fill us up on all that. So Mike, go ahead. What you got for the election?
Sure. Well, the election for town offices is March 30th. And the deadline for filing papers is coming up pretty soon. There aren't going to be many contested races. In fact, today was the first day I heard of any contested race. Somebody has taken out, a second candidate's taken out papers for school committee, I understand.
Oh, okay.
I don't know who it is, didn't mean anything to me, but you know, there's a lot of seats up, and we thought with all the interest over the past year in different issues, there'd be more people that would want to run for office, but they don't seem to have the inclination or the time or the wherewithal to run. So either that, or people are very happy with the way the town government's running, because if no one's challenging the incumbents for the most part.
And over the years, a lot of people told me they didn't want to take the chance of losing because it'd be embarrassing to their spouse, their kids.
I don't think that's the case.
I know for several people it was the case.
Yeah. I know it seems to be easier to get people to serve on committees than it is to get
They don't know how to get elected, you're right.
I always thought it maybe was having to stand down at the dump on a Saturday morning.
That's what I used to do.
Yes. But especially this time of year, it can be pretty windy down there. So, but that's it. So I don't think there's going to be any override questions on, although I'm working, trying to figure out but we have all the budgets in now. We have the warrants closed January 30th, and we have, I think we're going to end up with about 46 articles, but we don't have the capital budget figures in yet, so and some of the other articles don't have amounts yet. So it's a little hard to figure out what the estimate is for next year's expenditures and revenues.
When's the warrant hearing?
It usually is around March 18th, somewhere in that area. But it's mid-March. So, but there's 6 articles dealing with senior housing. That seems to be a very hot topic this year. There are 4 petition articles. There was one that was selectmen, or actually there'll be 7 because they have to do a zoning change. Although they were, last night their housing consultant came to the selectmen's meeting, was saying that there's going to be difficulty meeting the deadlines for the zoning article, particularly because of the notice requirements and publication requirements and hearings. So I don't know whether that will survive or whether it'll be taken up as special. They did discuss possibly putting it on the warrant for the special town meeting when the state hospital master plan.
Jeepers, it's going to be confusing enough though.
Yes, well, some people think it's related to the state hospital. I'm not sure it is, but
I don't think it is.
But anyhow, so there's potentially 7 articles dealing with senior housing. There's 3 proposing new buildings or additions to buildings. There's one for Park and Rec. It's put an article in to hire owner's project manager and an architect for design and cost estimate for a Park and Rec facility.
To be built where?
I believe their current thinking is still putting it up on the Sledding Hill at the State Hospital. There's some people think that maybe it should be put in the Dale Street School. That was mentioned last night to the selectmen's meeting. Then there's a proposal from the council, an article from the Council on Aging for owner's project manager and an architect for a 3,000 square foot addition for the center at Medfield. But neither of those figures I have costs on. That's
Okay, I need that.
making it difficult to figure out where we are in terms of whether we're going to need an override or not. And the third one is for a feasibility study for the replacement of the Dale Street School. And that I understand is about $1.5 million. And that will require an override, debt exclusion override. So
Do they have any idea how expensive the new building would be?
The figures I've heard tossed around were $50 million.
Jeepers, is that right?
That was about my reaction.
You toss it around like just like that, 50 mil?
The town
Wow.
share of that, we get, believe it or not, from school building assistance, they have calculated that we're entitled to 39.84% reimbursement.
Okay.
I said, couldn't they just round it up to 40%, make it a lot easier? So the town share would be around 30 million if those cost estimates hold true. It's a little bit early to say because they're a long ways away, but apparently that's what, and this is for an elementary school. The feasibility studies determine is it needed, they study enrollment projections, they study things like soil conditions and locations where it's going. And I think the thinking of the school committee and the school administration is that they are thinking of combining the Dale Street and the Wheelock School into one school, and essentially renovating the Wheelock School and putting addition on for the Dale Street School. But that's far away. That's part of what they will determine in the feasibility study. So, as I said, that will require an override. Now, the question comes up is, should the override go on the ballot for the town election, or should it be a special after the town meeting? And the school department seems to be, at this point, seems to be inclined to want to have a special election after the town meeting.
After it, okay.
They say they need to get more information out about the project, what's being proposed, so the voters will be informed when they vote. So those are the three construction articles.
You need an override also for the proposed addition to the senior center?
I don't know. No, they've raised some money on their own. Whether that will be sufficient to pay for what they're looking for, or whether they want to hold that for the actual construction. Cost of that seems to be somewhere around. I just come up with a rough estimate of $1,650,000. As I figured, $500 a square foot. 3,000 square feet is $1.5 million, and then maybe another $150,000 for soft costs, owner's project manager and architect. For those who wonder what is an owner's project manager, a few years ago the state passed a law that any project over, I think, $1 million, the town has to, or city or town has to hire a owner's project manager to oversee the whole process, including the hiring of the architect. So you have to hire the owner's project manager before you hire the architect, because they're supposed to help you hire the architect and do the search. And they oversee the bidding process for the general contractor and the file sub bids and all that rigmarole. They oversee the construction and check on the billings to make sure they are in line with the work that's been done. And then you hire an architect, and the architect actually designs the building and prepares the construction documents. So it's a complicated process. I wasn't wild about it when it passed, but I must admit, as far as the public safety building, it worked very well. That project came in ahead of schedule, and they have about $600,000 left over from the amount that was voted for. So Usually, many projects in the past, I remember going back for more money to complete them. This one, they have money left over. Plus, they were able to put in solar panels on the fire station wing where the equipment is housed. And they built the parking lot across the street for the Dale Street School because they were using that whole gravel parking lot
Yeah.
on Dale Street, so they had to build a new parking lot. They paid for that, and they also renovated the basketball courts down at the corner of Dale and Adams Street.
Yeah,
So-
are they still well used? They used to be.
Oh, they're very well used.
I think it's great.
Yes, yeah. But anyhow, that's the process you have to go through. And then in addition, with the Dale Street School, because school building assistance is involved, they have reams and reams and reams of paperwork you have to comply with. So, because when they were talking about the feasibility study, I said, what do you need a feasibility study for? You know what you want to do? Why don't you just go ahead and do it? What do you spend $1.5 million for? And they started explaining you have to justify the enrollment figures, justify the need, programmatic need, test for soil conditions, do preliminary designs. They have to approve the square footage of the proposed addition. And now they have where you're supposed to take the plans from another school and use those plans rather than start all over again designing a new building, which kind of makes sense. Although you think that would drive the cost down, not up.
Yeah, you would.
Now we got up 50 million, but anyhow, those are going to be issues facing the voters at town meeting.
They're huge issues, dollar-wise. They really are.
They are, yes, yeah. And then there's a couple of bylaw changes. One of them you'll get a kick out of. There's been a proposal to change the lease law to better define it. And it was, I said, you know, I understand the lease law was very controversial. It was before my time.
Oh my God, was it ever?
And somebody said, you mean something happened before your time in Medfield? And I said, I'm not that old.
I still remember at the Warren hearing, a certain man who you'd probably know, I won't use his name, he stood up at the Warren hearing when we were discussing the leash law. I was on the Warren committee at the time. And he stood up and he said, leash my grandmother, but don't leash my dog. So I loved it.
I'm sure there are a lot of people that still feel that way.
Probably were.
Yeah.
Somebody maybe remembered, bring it back up.
But apparently one of the issues is that in the bylaw, it says the dog have to be under your control.
Under voice control, yeah.
And that doesn't, some people have interpreted that to say if your dog is walking by your side, it's under your control, rather than having to be on a leash. But then if the dog sees another dog and decides he wants to
go play.
go play or fight or whatever, it can be an issue, especially for some people are afraid of dogs. So that's one. There's one to amend the bylaws to define the duties of the Permanent Planning and Building Committee so that any project, instead of going right to town meeting, would have to go to the selectmen first, and then they would refer it to the Permanent Planning and Building Committee, and they would come back with a report and recommendation to the selectmen as to whether it made sense.
Feasible, yeah.
So I think that's probably a good procedure because the people on that committee are very competent, very capable in construction and architecture and whatnot. It's a very good committee. So that's another one, and there's one to, let me see. Oh, there's one to give Water and Sewer Board the authority to make regulations and to impose procedures for violation of regulations, including fines, I believe. So.
Okay.
And the fourth one, frankly, I got out of work at 10 o'clock last night and had a meeting at 7 this morning, so I don't even remember what the fourth one was. So maybe it'll come back to me later on. But, so those are, as I said, several bylaw changes.
There's some big issues there, though.
There are,
really
but you
are.
never know what the big issues are. I mean, the leash law doesn't sound like a big issue, but it could become one.
It could be, yeah.
Depending on how many people show up for that, that could be a motivating factor. And there's a lot of routine articles. We actually have 4 articles for payment of prior year bills, and they're kind of routine. You know, one of them, the sealer thought he had to submit his reimbursement on a calendar year basis instead of a fiscal year basis, so
okay.
he submitted bills after the end of the fiscal year.
Oh, yeah.
And there was a couple of small bills for the police department, and they come in after, you know, the hospitals or the medical service often doesn't send them out for months, and the fiscal year is closed, so they have to be voted. And that, believe it or not, takes an 8/10 vote at an annual town meeting and a 9/10 vote at a special town meeting to pay a prior year bill.
Oh,
Yeah. So those are the big articles. There are probably some others that people would be interested in that we send out that booklet right before town meeting for anybody that is interested in finding out what's going to be on the warrant.
yeah.
So last year, for the first time, because we had so many long articles, we actually put it in a big booklet, and a lot of people liked the big booklet better because the print was larger and they were
Okay.
able to read it better. However, it did cost about 3 times what we normally
God.
pay for it. Normally we just have a booklet that's stapled together, and this had to be bound because it was so thick. So, there are a couple of zoning changes proposed. One of them is to do with procedures for waiving landscaping buffer requirements in certain zoning districts. I think it's the industrial, commercial districts and the RU district. So that's fairly straightforward. There's another one dealing with multifamily housing requirements. There's that whole definition of confusion over what's a 2-family house. Does it have to be one on top of the other, or can they be side by side? And what does that do? Your setback requirements and lot coverage, and so that gets pretty complicated. So planning board's had their hearings on those already, and so they're ready to go for the warrant. So it's an interesting warrant for several reasons, but and then you have the routine stuff that hopefully we'll go through quickly. The budgets are all in. Some of them that we did get some good news on. Some of the budgets, the health insurance rate increase is going to be less than we projected. It's only going up about 4%.
That's good news.
And we are probably likely going to offer a high deductible plan. A lot of the employees, particularly some of the younger ones, were concerned with the size of the monthly premium. So the Insurance Advisory Committee has been meeting over the past couple of years to try to come up with an alternate plan that would not be as expensive. And so I think they've finally come to some agreement with the school unions, and it looks like we're going to offer it as a third plan for those employees that might be interested, and see what happens, see how many really want to take it. But then the school budget came in initially, I think, at about a 7.8% increase.
Yeah, I heard that.
And they've got it down to, I think, 5.9% increase now, after the 7.85 was what comes in from the principals and the various departments, and that always gets whittled down somewhat, but it needs to be whittled down more. I think it's still about a $1.3 million increase.
That's
I think
a lot.
originally it was
It is a
about
lot.
$2 million, and we only get about $1.3 million, $1.4 million in new revenue every year. We did get the cherry sheet early this year, or at least the governor's version of the cherry sheet. Whether it will, the House and the Senate usually try to up the amounts, but it wasn't particularly large this year, particularly for the schools. I think the schools Chapter 70 allotment only went up about 35,000. So certainly not the 4% or 5% increase they're looking for. So if their budget is approved at those levels, that money is going to have to come from someplace
something else. Yeah, you're right.
And we haven't had an operating override in about, I think, 5 or 6 years now.
Suits me fine.
Yes. Well, I think people don't realize it because we have had several debt exclusion overrides for the town garage, public safety building. So that's going to be interesting to see, and that's what I'm trying to work on now to figure out whether we're going to need one or not. So revenues are not growing, keeping pace with expenditures.
Yeah.
I said, I think everybody thinks the recession's over because everybody seems to be coming in with big expenditure proposals this year. There is some talk about hiring a prevention coordinator. There's been in many of the towns a rash of suicides, and there's the opioid crisis. And
is
all
that
those
becoming
issues.
necessary?
They tell me it is.
Okay,
They've had a
think of that.
committee, Medfield, and we have had some
Yeah, I know of several.
incidents. So whether it's an aberration or a trend, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's hard to tell. So that's that's going to be an increase. There's the whole ALS issue that for advanced life support, and that will be. The committee's been working. Their meeting's got 11 o'clock at night. So we'll have to see what they come up with in terms of recommendations, but that could add to the fire department budget, depending on which solution they come up with. So, you add all those things up. Our pension costs went up 10% for Norfolk County Retirement System. And, you can't get blood out of a stone. If you're getting 2.5% a year plus new growth, that probably brings you about 3%.
Yeah.
And if you take the increase in state aid, it's less than the 2.5%. It's probably only about 1% or less. So that means you're down to around 2.5% again. And with all these increases for new projects, new buildings, new programs, new staff, it's getting tougher every year.
Sure.
Especially when people think that Medfield's a rich town, they can afford anything. Well, I always say that Medfield's a poor town with a lot of rich people, and Chelsea's a rich town with a lot of poor people. In the way state aid is distributed, they get huge amounts towards their school costs, and we get about 15% of our school budget paid for by the state. And some of the communities on school buildings will get 60, 80%. We get 39.84%, so we have to pony up a lot of the money ourselves. There's the perception that we are fat cats, and I always say that Boston, Cambridge, and now Somerville are the fat cats, particularly Boston and Cambridge. They're just awash in an ocean of money. And yet they cry poor mouth, and they have the votes in the legislature, and they get what they want, and we get the bills to pay for it. So.
But it isn't just the cost of building these new facilities, whichever one of the three you're thinking about. They have to be staffed, they have to be run, they have to be heated, have to be cooled, have to be maintained.
Exactly.
And there are huge costs that goes along with it.
Yes, yeah. Now the new buildings, the type of construction is much more energy efficient, say, and if you maintain them, I must say the facilities manager program that we instituted a couple of years ago is working spectacularly. They've Jerry McCarty, who's the new facilities manager, he's an incredible worker. And, but he's uncovered, or it's been uncovered for them, leaky roofs, leaky boilers, all kinds of problems, particularly in the school buildings that, I don't know, lack of maintenance or poor design and when the new schools were built. But every day, I said, you know, Jerry, you're not able to do what we hired you to do. We hired you to figure out how to prepare a capital budget, which he's done, by the way, a 20-year capital budget, and to work on long-term solutions to these problems. But you know, you've got leaky roofs and failing boilers and everything else, so you've got to run around trying to patch the holes instead of being able to address the long-term problems. So, but he's really doing a great job.
That's good.
And I think part of the problem is in the past, the state programs were stacked, particularly school building assistants, towards letting a building fall apart. I remember arguing with one of our representatives that when they did the education reform funding formula, there should have been a provision in there requiring schools to spend a certain amount of their budget on maintenance.
Absolutely.
And I was told, oh, no, there's already too many regulations in there. We can't put any more in. Well, the regulations they put in cost the taxpayers more money, in my opinion. But the regulations that could have saved us money
Absolutely, I think
got knocked out, which frequently happens at the state level. So, but it was interesting. I was looking at some of the real estate records in the Boston Business Journal. They will publish a few for different counties, and I was looking at some of the major projects that have been sold recently and the prices, and I said, my God, they're far cheaper than what it's going to cost us to build an elementary school. Why does it cost so much? And it's because you have all these laws the state passes to please everybody that drive up the price.
Yeah.
And you get prevailing wage, you've got file sub bids, you've got, you know, environmental legislation, you've got safety regulations and elevator regulations, and the list goes on, and they all drive up the prices, and then it gets so complicated you can't get many people to bid on these projects. And they tell me now there's probably only about 5 or 6 companies in the state that will bid on a school project.
Wow.
So the regulations are so complex that they just can't be bothered. It's too expensive to put a proposal together to just prepare the bid, and then if you don't get it, you're out a couple of $100,000 just that you've lost on preparing the proposal. So, on the other hand, I suppose if you get it, you know, you might make a lot of money, but unless something goes wrong. I remember one of our school projects, we had the poor contractor. He was a good contractor, but he poured concrete on a rainy day, and they could never get the concrete to dry. They had to rip up the whole floor, and he ended up going bankrupt as a result. So.
When was this?
Oh, this was about 10, 12 years ago.
I don't remember that at all.
You should have. It was a school right behind your old house.
Okay.
But you know, that's what people don't understand, and even myself, I found it hard to understand. I remember kidding Ken Feeney when we were looking at the town garage and the price tag on it, and I said, "Why don't you go up to Snow Hill and buy 2 or 3 mansions? They got big garages, they got gourmet kitchens, they got you know, office space, and you'd probably still have a couple of $1 million left over." I said, "Except I don't think Dover would be too happy about it." But that's it's the way government works. It pushes the cost up. When that's why I laugh when I hear the politicians at state level saying we're partnering with the cities and towns. They're not partnering; they're dictating. So, and as a result, it pushes up the cost of everything we do. So, once in a while, you get a state agency that's very helpful and really does try to bend over backwards to help you out. But There's so many others. I look at the T, for example. When I was on the T Advisory Board, Finance Committee, they had a surplus in their pension fund. Now they have a $3 billion deficit.
Oh my
billion.
God.
So, and you know, you say, what happened?
Yeah.
And there's no oversight. You know, it's considered a private pension system. No one's allowed to see it because it's not a public entity.
Jeepers.
And you say, but the taxpayers contribute probably about 80% of those funds.
I would think so.
If not more. And yet they can't see what's being done, what investments are being made, what the performance record is, how the pensions are allocated. And yet every year they're asked to pony up more and more money to fund it. And when they say the T is broken, part of the reason it's broken is just because you've got things like that are happening that, you know, when you get a system that has more retirees than employees, what do you expect? You know, how long would a private corporation last run that way?
I'm assuming that our next meeting, you might have some general idea of how much our taxes will be going up if all of these building projects pass?
Well, first of all, I don't think they're all going to pass. I'd be very surprised if they
Who
do,
knows,
but
though?
yes, you don't know. Well, you know, for example, I don't know what the Park and Rec building is coming in at. This is for design funds to design a building, so you don't know what the
real cost.
What the real cost is until it's designed, and you get some actual cost
Yeah, that's
estimates based on the design. The Council on Aging is a little bit easier because it's an addition to
Which
an
is much
existing
easier, of course.
building, and a lot of the site work and infrastructure is done, so that's an easy one to figure. And the schools, they take, you know, what other school projects are coming in at. And, by the way, we got a report about the cost of the public safety building, and I know a lot of people think it was way too expensive. But we had a list of other public safety projects, and there's a lot of public safety buildings been going up lately. Sharon has done it. Needham is in the process of doing it. Westwood, they didn't do a joint. They kept them separate. They built a new station at Islington, and then they built a new police station. And there's several other towns. I think Sudbury did a new station. And when you look at the square foot cost, Medfield's right at the bottom. We were very lucky, and I think part of it was our planning and building committee did such a good job, and the chief
Good
did
for
a
them.
good job keeping,
Hope they
you
keep
know,
it up.
attention to detail. Yeah.
I hope
yeah.
they do.
Well, that's why they recommend to bring in a facilities manager to take care of the buildings, because you can put up a fancy building, but if you don't take care of it, you're going to have a hunk of junk in 20 years. So. Speaking of which, by the way, this summer, the library addition and the town hall will be 20 years old. They were both opened in the summer of 1968. No, not 68, 98. So 18 will be 20 years. And they're still both in pretty good shape. So, you know, people come in and are surprised when you tell them that the renovation was done 20 years ago. So, we have a new veterans agent too. We finally were able to consolidate with the town of Walpole, and our selectmen voted a couple of weeks ago to hire the Walpole Veterans Agent part-time, and well, he's full-time between the two towns, but he's available. He'll be available in Medfield part-time and in Walpole part-time, and the Walpole selectmen voted to approve sign the contract
When will he start?
last Tuesday. Well, we're trying to see if we could start February 1st, which is tomorrow, but so obviously it isn't going to be quite that soon, but you know,
But as soon
we'd
as they
like
can.
to start as soon as we
Good.
can, yeah. So I know it's been way too long without a veterans agent, and we need to we needed to get moving on that. So. And they're doing interviews for the fire chief. Chief Hollingshead has been a great find. He's been really done a great job, and he likes Medfield. He's fascinated by the town. He said, your town is very different. So, but he's, as a result, I think he spent a lot more time here than he needed to, because he said, you know, your department heads work together, they don't fight with each other, they get along. And he said it's the boards and committees seem to be very capable and very helpful, and
Good.
So, but they are in the process of reviewing the applications they've got for the fire chief replacement. Chief Hollingshead can only work so many hours a year because he's retired from the town of Hull.
Oh, that's right.
So,
Yeah.
so we do have to get a replacement. You know, we've been so lucky having Chief Kingsbury and Chief Meany that they got along so well. They worked together so well on the.
And before
road
that, Bill
safety
Mann
building.
and Joe Ryan before them.
Yes, yes, and they're both still doing fine.
They
Joe
are. They're
came
great,
by to
good,
see
very
me
good
the
men.
other day. Yeah. So I said, "What bill are you paying today?" He usually comes by to see me when he's paying a water bill or a tax bill or something. So, but he's he and Bill and Elizabeth are all doing great. So I think, now what else were we going to talk about? Oh, the snow.
I don't like to talk
believe it or
about
not, the selectmen voted to declare a snow emergency last night. It's not that we're out of money, but because of the way the storms hit, they let them hit on weekends, which is good for commuting. We also had one on Martin Luther King Day, and Sundays and holidays are double time, so it costs you extra money. And there was a lot of icing too that they had to get called out for. So our wage account is gone. We have not used a lot of hired equipment, and we actually had a decrease in the price of salt. It dropped about $12 a ton. Not salt, sand. No, salt.
Okay.
So we had some savings there, and we still had, I think, last figures I was given, we had about $90,000 left in the operations account,
Okay.
and only about $3,000 left in the wage account. I think we spend about $280,000 a year. We budget for snow and ice removal, and you know, they don't up it enough to take into account the cost of repairing equipment and purchasing supplies and whatnot. But I think they've done a really good job on the storms we have had. That
think so, too.
14-inch storm, you know. I was talking to my brother who lives down in Virginia, and he was complaining that the kids down there were out of school for 7 days. So he loves to rub it in about how little snow they get down there. So
Yeah.
I decided it's my turn. So I said, well, gee, our kids were only out the day of the storm, and they had a 2-hour storm delay the next day. So they've only really had one snow day so far.
But a new resident commented on that to me the other day, saying that she had never lived in a town where it was handled so beautifully and so fast and so well.
Yes.
She was very impressed by the highway department.
Yeah. I think, and it's been a long tradition. It goes back to Billy McCarthy.
Absolutely.
I remember when I first came to town, Billy McCarthy used to run over after every storm to check out Dover and Needham streets, because the three superintendents, Medfield, Dover, and Needham, all had a little competition over who
A
did
little
the best job.
competition.
Yes, yes. And Billy always used to say, well, the reason Dover streets are clean, they're all white because they use pure salt, and it's polluting our wells. And so, you know, but
I know, but that was fun.
yes, yeah. And then Ken Feeney and Bobby Kennedy Sr. did
All
a
good,
great
yep.
job. And
We've been lucky with the people
and,
heading different departments and different projects. We really have been
yeah,
very
yeah.
good, strong, honest people.
And you know, our new superintendent, Mo Goulet, he's very impressed with
I'm
with the guys
impressed
in the
with him.
Public Works Department. Yeah, you like that sidewalk they put down on Dale Street, that replacement by the railroad tracks?
Oh,
They
I was
fixed it,
amazed at
yes,
that, how
yes.
beautifully he handled that. So
Yeah,
all
yeah.
up and down the street are
And I
commenting.
think when they paved Main Street through the center last year, that went very
That was
slowly.
beautifully
Yeah,
done.
Yeah, and
It's a big improvement.
the one thing that's slow, and it's nothing to do with him, it's just the way the process works, is the bridge on Phillip Street. It's taken a long time to get that done, but it's in the works, and hopefully we'll have that done this spring or summer. And he's been working with the state engineers. We're in the Worcester district now. We used to be in the Burlington or Wilmington district, I think. Before we were in Taunton, and they moved us to Wilmington, and then they moved us to Worcester. So I don't know where we'll go next. There aren't too many districts left. I guess there's one in Arlington.
Timbuktu will be next.
Yeah, will probably put us down in the Berkshires or something. So, and the state has agreed to put up some money for the repairs to the West Street Bridge, and to try to get us on the federal bridge
That'd be good.
program, where eventually we would be eligible for federal funding for that bridge, because it really is a commuting road. It's not a town road, town bridge. It's for either Medfield or Millis. It's probably as many people from Medway and Franklin and Norfolk use that road as people from Medfield. But they have agreed that the 109 bridge is a state-owned bridge, and it's their responsibility.
Good.
So, and they don't think they'll have enough funds to do more than minor repairs on it this summer, but they're going to try to do something in the near future, probably the following year, and try to do some repairs on it, because boy, that would be critical if anything ever happened to that
Oh
bridge.
my God, I can't imagine it.
That would be a chaos.
I don't know where the cars would go, for Pete's sake.
Yeah. Well, and that's another, we put an article in hoping that we might get some money to do some improvements to the intersection at North Meadows, Route 27 on West Street. That seems to be a perennial accident spot. For some reason, people seem to try to get through the lights there, and somebody sees the light changes in the other direction and goes through, and there's a lot of collisions down there. So we think that there needs to be some improvements in the signals and the striping and whatnot. So we're hoping to try to get some money. So a lot going on. It's as always, it never seems to end. I thought after we finished the town garage and the public safety building, I'd get a bit of a breather, but it doesn't look that way.
No, it looks like it's going to be a very busy and very interesting town meeting.
Yes, yeah. So
Maybe not in a good way, but it's going to be interesting.
Yeah. Well, a lot of things that were controversial ended up turning out for the best. I remember how controversial the 3-school renovation was when we did that, and everybody was up in arms, and the vote passed at town meeting, and then the override failed. And it reminded me, last night I was watching the North Andover town meeting on the news, and they had 2,600 people attend their town meeting.
Oh my God.
It was a proposal whether to ban, they had a group proposing to put a marijuana farm in, and I don't know whether it's true or not. But
I heard about that on the news,
Yes, and it was defeated by about 55 to 45%. So, but one guy got up and said, "I didn't move to North Andover to move to the largest marijuana home in the largest marijuana factory in the world, or farm in the world."
We'd make money for the town, though.
Yes, it would. That's what some of the towns are banking on that. They figure
can see
that's going to solve their budget problems.
Literally banking on it.
Yes, yeah. Somebody said to me one day, "Well, I don't know why you're worried about marijuana stores in your town, because nobody's going to buy marijuana in their own town. They're going to go to another town to buy it." So, but I think we're better off without it, frankly. I just don't. At least I can see some of the medical uses. I think maybe that's appropriate for that. But somebody said, "Well, it's no worse than alcohol." I said, "Well, look at all the problems alcohol's caused." So, So we're, and then you've got the opioid crisis, which
Sure.
is a nightmare. It's kind of interesting. All these cities and towns seem to are starting to sue the pharmaceutical companies.
Yeah, I
don't
heard
know-
that, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how that will work out, but the lawyers will do well on
I'm
with
sure they
all these
will.
lawsuits coming along. And those class action lawsuits is where they really rake up the fees. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, well,
Well-
in another month, we'll have another roundup
Yes,
and see how much closer you know more about the figures,
Yeah.
dollar figures by then.
and the Winter Olympics will be over. It'll only be about 20 or 30 days till spring.
And the Super Bowl will be over.
Yes, that's right. We'll know whether Boston or Philly wins, or Foxborough or Philly, I guess. Since we both have ties to Philly, I don't know, we have to be, move from one side to the other
Yeah.
at halftime.
I'll be happy no matter who wins.
Yeah, that's my feeling too. It's just, obviously I think I'd like to see the Patriots win, the hometown team.
Sure.
On the other hand, Philly has been down for so long in terms of sports, they need a break once in a while.
And that's where I grew up, spent many years.
Yeah,
Several of my kids were born there too.
yeah.
So we lived there a long time.
You better not spread that around too fast.
That's what I was just thinking. Told somebody that I wish I still had my Philadelphia Eagles shirt and I could wear it to church on Sunday morning.
I
Can you imagine
know.
what would happen?
If the Patriots win, nobody would care. You
True.
can wear it all you wanted. So
But this would be before the game, so I
Yes.
think it'd be kind of fun.
yeah.
But-
Well, I guess we've talked myself out once again. So
Well,
it's
and
always
then
a
we'll be
pleasure to come.
back in a month
Yep.
and see what else you can find to talk about. I'm sure there'll be a few more things going on.
Oh yeah, we had plenty today.
Yeah,
so.
there's a lot going on.
And I'm sure once they turn off the cameras, we'll think about the things we've forgotten to talk about.
I probably always do.
That's why we need it once a month, I guess. So,
Okay, well, thanks, Mike, for coming. And you at home, thank you so much for watching Medfield TV. We hope you'll keep tuning in and finding out what's going on in different segments of the town, because it's important. If you're paying the taxes and you're living here, you got to know what's happening.
oh, and I should say one other additional thing. Last night, the selectmen's meeting went live again, and some people hadn't been able to get it for quite a while, and the meetings are supposedly going to go out live again. So if people want to find out what's going on and they don't want to wait a week till after the selectmen's meeting, they can try to see if the meetings are live.
As it used to be when I was on the board, yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, well, again, thank you for watching Medfield TV. Do listen to Mike and do watch the selectmen as well, and just keep in tune with what's going on in the town that you live in. Thank you for watching Medfield TV.
Medfield TV, community shows.